Hello and welcome to our coffee and consulting from this week with the topic compliance requirements for a remote workforce. My name is Friederike Ruch and I'm happy to be with you for the next 30 to 60 minutes in regard to that topic and go through with you through the compliance requirements. Before I start, on the right-hand side down, you will find the slides from today. So if you want to download them, then do so while the presentation is on. The other thing is you're all put unmute. So in case you have any questions, and please ask any questions you may have to that topic, please use the chat box and we will answer the questions after the first slides and the introduction to the topic and the summary basically to that. Then you hopefully will have all the answers you need for that topic. In case you don't find the time right now to write the questions down while I'll hold the presentation, then you can always drop us afterwards an email and we will see that we will provide you with an answer afterwards. So our topic is the compliance requirements for remote working. Now, remote working, that is not just one category or one concept. There are several concepts or categories you will find. And depending on the category and how it looks like or what you would like to do, there are different possibilities or situations to look at. We have listed down in or put all those kind of remote working systems we know in three categories basically. One is the cross-border employee who basically would like to work for a certain period of time also from his home office. And there we have listed down the example to make it more make it more seeable what we mean with it. So it's Lisa Schubert who lives in Germany and is employed in Switzerland, and she would like to work now for 2 days a week in the home office and 3 days in the office itself in Switzerland. You may have that topic, or you had that topic already before remote working was such a matter or such a hot topic. Now that is also a part of remote working. The other one is if somebody would like to work for a limited period outside of the usual workplace, basically. There's also the word you may have heard in that regard, workation. So people who want to go on holiday and then combine work with vacation. Or what we also see quite often, it is that maybe parents living in a different country and people would like to combine visiting the parents with working there as well from there, or just doing that also in a bit of a more regular basis. So family related, or some have also houses somewhere else and would like to prefer to work there and use them more often than before. And the permanent basis is something where with the current situation that it's hard to find good talents and specialists. So you like to, if you find somebody, you like to really employ the person. And sometimes the employee or the new hire would like not to just leave the country of residence. They would like to stay based on whatever reasons and don't want to move then to the other country. We have that quite often in Switzerland, that it is not always, even Switzerland is a great country, and some really would like to move here from a tax, just from a tax point of view already. But sometimes people are hesitant because if you have children, then the school system is different. If you have a spouse, it might be not that easy that the spouse will also find work. So there are a lot of things to consider as well. And as there are possibilities to work also from a technical point, usually from wherever you are, then that wish to actually see whether there's a possibility to remain at home in the country they resided before and to not really have to move for the job. The aspects usually you have to look at is the technical ones, the administration, which can be quite a big challenging point, the legal aspect, as well as in the end as well the associated costs. And associated cost as well is not just that you need to do a couple of things in order to make sure you are legally compliant. And legal compliance, you all know that that is not always cheap. Some of the stuff you really have to do something for it, and therefore, or better to say, in order as well to avoid even higher costs like fines or sanctions. Now, what are the aspects we have to basically look at when we talk about remote working? It's the usual ones. It's Social Security, which is, and you may see that, most likely the easiest topic, at least for the first two categories, for the cross-border employees, as well as the people who go just for a limited period somewhere else. Income taxation. Also, there are a couple of solutions to that. That might not be the major point. Permanent establishment, that is rather something depending basically on the level of someone in the company, where the risk is higher or less. Labor law aspects, and that is at the moment something which, depending on how long someone is going in the other country, or also how regular the whole thing is, therefore depending is you need to consider any labor law changes or not. Immigration, we will look at that in a second as well. You always have to look at whether the person is allowed to work in the other country. Payroll matter. Usually, if there is no social security liability in the other country or income tax liability in the other country, then usually there's also no payroll requirement. However, depending on the cross-border employee and how that work in the home office will be regulated, there might be a requirement. And where you definitely will have one is if you have a permanent employee in another country, then definitely in that country you will also have a payroll requirement. And then as well, there are other regulations you have to look at as well, like data protection and so on. And last but not least, you will have to define or set up processes for all these three categories in case you do really want to offer it or be open to that for your employees. You will have to look at how you want to do the administration, whether you rather do everything in-house or you do need the support from outside as well, and to see how that actually can best work out, also from a timing perspective. Let's start with the first one, labor law. In principle, the labor law always, and that is in all countries, is basically to protect employees. And therefore, if you send somebody or if you give someone the chance to work abroad, then you will have to look at whether you need to make any adjustments or changes to your current employment contract, as well as whether the labor law from the country the individual is working out from or wants to work out from, whether there are some requirements which are in contradiction to the ones you have or which are currently in place. The mandatory requirements, and we have listed down there the most relevant ones, is something you always have to look at. So independent on the length of the working from abroad, you will have to look at those requirements from the other country and see, in case there are any contradictions, then definitely always the employee should get the better of both. That there is a complete change, or you have to really also make major adjustments to the employment contract. That is then basically the longer somebody would like to work from abroad, or the more regular that is, then you will have to look at the labor law requirements a bit more closer, and might have then to definitely make also changes. Or in case you don't want to make any changes to the current ones, then at least you need to keep in mind that there is a certain risk to it. Maybe one thing before we move to immigration, what we usually had, or the last couple of times, were questions about the bank holidays. Because if somebody is working, for example, on the 1st of August, which is in Switzerland, a national holiday, but now the employee would like to be over the 1st of August, would like, for example, to work out of France because he has their family and would like to just work there. Now, the bank holiday requirement is that in the country the individual is and would like to work, that there is no bank holiday. So, for example, if on that 1st of August the individual would like to work out of France, then yes, from a legal point of view, that is absolutely possible. Now, what you also have to look at, whether you would like to open up that thing and say, yes, you can work if there is in Switzerland a bank holiday and you would like to work from abroad, no problem at all. But there might be then a couple of other discussions around that. So be careful with that part. Immigration, our next topic. Basically, the principal rule is for any performing of work, wherever that is, you will need a work permit or work authorization. So you will have to figure out basically what the nationality is of the employee, the type of work, and then the period the individual would like to work abroad. And based on that, you need to make an assessment and to see whether a work permit, work visa, or if we are within the EU, then that posted worker notification has to be considered. As long as the employee has the nationality of the country he would like to work out from, then there is no problem at all. You don't need to do anything from an immigration perspective. If not, then definitely you will need to check that. And depending what it is, if you definitely have to request a full work permit, then this might be not really possible, because usually if you want to request a work permit, you need also to have a sponsor in that country, meaning a kind of legal entity. And there these digital nomad visas come into place. Some countries have already implemented those visas. Now within Europe, we have, I think, 5 to 8 countries which have implemented such a visa. If we go a bit further out, then there are much more of those types available. But you will have to check that whether there is a possibility, or whether from an immigration perspective, you basically have to also say, no, it's not possible. The link below will provide you the or brings you to the page where you have all the EU member states listed, and then you can just click on those countries, and they will move you, or you will be directed to the pages about posted worker notification. Because even that is a general rule within Europe, or within the EU member states, better to say, it's not that each country has the same regulations and the same process and the same way how to do it. So have a look at there as well. Social Security, I already said that in principle, you will have the possibility, if you would like to send somebody for a limited period abroad, then in case there is a Social Security treaty in place between both countries and the individual has the nationality required for it, then there's a possibility to keep that the employee in this home social security system and get the employee exempted from the host social security system, like you would do, or like the rules you have for assignments. And basically we use for those remote workings, we do use the assignment regulations in those treaties to get them remaining in the home system and exempted from the host system. And that is basically also the idea that each employer should see whenever possible to keep the employee in the social security system they are enrolled before they moved to the other country. Now, on the first page, we saw those 3 categories. Now, for cross-border employees, you most likely have all already in mind the 25% rule. And that is the one you basically will look at, that you will see that the employee will work less than 25% in the home country. So what you would offer an employee typically will be to work 1 day per week out of the home office and 4 days in the office. Because then you will not have to switch to the social security system in the other country. Usually you will try to avoid having to switch an employee to the other system. And that is not just because you then have to set up a new payroll, see that you take out the necessary insurances. Sometimes even you may have less social security contributions to pay. But the whole setup and the administration around it with a system you're not that familiar with, it's not that easy. The other one is as well that if you have someone enrolled in a different system, then you have the matter that in case of sickness or accident and somebody is for a longer term not able to work, the system and regulations from the other country will come into place. So if it's then about the continuation of paying salary, it's not any longer the Swiss um, legal requirements and the Swiss regulations which are applicable, but it's the other ones. So you will have in the end employees being treated differently and having not the same type of insurance benefits. And you will not even be able to get that equally because of the systems are just completely different set up. You also will have that matter with employees working on a permanent basis from another country. But that is something you cannot even avoid, that the person will be enrolled in the in the system the employer is situated. You will always have to look at the system the employee is working from. So you can avoid another social security system only for cross-border employments if you limit it to those 25%. And for the people who want to work for a limited period outside of Switzerland, if you look at wherever you can use the social security treaty regulations and make sure that the individual will be in that area. Income tax, that is also something you will have to review if you have someone working remotely from another country. The first thing is that you have to determine the tax residency of the individual, because that is basically then also the country where you need to check on the double tax treaty, because the double tax treaty is always between the country the employee has his tax residence and the country he would like to work from. So if we take, for example, a cross-border employee, so someone who is living in Germany and working and being employed in Switzerland, and he would like now to work for a certain period in France, for example, then we don't have to look at the double tax treaty between Switzerland and France, but we have to look at the double tax treaty between Germany and France and see whatever the regulations there are. The withholding tax requirement is also something you will have to check on, whether there is any in the country the employee wants to work from. Usually, there is a withholding tax requirement for an employer if that country says there is an economical employer or a factual employer, or they see there is any other type of vehicle, basically, why the employer abroad should be required to do withholding tax. Tax equalization is also a topic you have to look at in case in the end the employee will become taxable in the other country, and the taxation might be then higher than the one which he had in the home country. Now, for the category of permanent employees, tax equalization is actually not really a topic, because you will define the arrangements from the beginning, and from the beginning it's quite clear the individual will be subject to the taxation in the other in the country they reside, and usually also you will, from the first day on, there will be a withholding tax requirement for those people. The tax equalization matter is more than for cross-border employees or for people who would like to work for a certain period outside of Switzerland. Basically, you can try to avoid the income taxation in the other country in case you stay within the 183 days rule, as well as meet all the requirements and conditions, and see that there is nothing which will actually, in the end, help the employee to become taxable in the other country. You also might want to see that the employee in the other, if they are working in another country, to support them in regards to tax compliance in case that is linked to the work. Now, what we often have the discussion with employers is that workation or that working for a limited period outside of their usual environment is because of a wish from the employee. It's not because the employer wants the employee working there. That remote working concept is usually rather based on the wish from the employee. And therefore, typically, employer tend then to say any kind of tax implications should then also not, in the end, be the burden from the employer, but rather something the employee has to take care of and has to pay for. And therefore, also in regard to tax compliance, employers say basically it's the matter or the issue from the employee because he wanted to work from a different country. Now, even that is completely true and understandable. Independent on that, we usually advise that you either make it very clear from the beginning, or you rather see that you may help the employee to get the tax compliance or get the tax support in the other country, so that also from your end there's nothing anybody can say, because in the end the tax liability in the other country may arise just because of working for you in the other country. So that was basically a quick overview about all the different legal aspects. In order now to be compliant and to avoid any kind of fines and sanctions, and there had been at least not that many fines and sanctions being known, but the concept of remote working is maybe also not or too fresh, better to say. And usually it takes a bit for the authority to get hold of everything. What we see and what the tendency is that countries will check much more on foreigners working in their country, and the checks will be in regard to immigration. Next year as well, there will be within the EU the kind of equivalent what we have in the US with the ESTA. There's a similar one or similar concept will be implemented next year within the EU. And there's also a new requirement in regard for the Schengen area, which basically makes any move from someone more more transparent, and therefore countries will see that. And based on that, information will flow more easily, and therefore the authorities be quicker aware of someone working in their country, and therefore all those risks we have listed there and all these matters will be then looked in a much closer way. Therefore, it's good if you already now will take care of it and check on it and make certain maybe certain adjustments or align your processes so that you definitely can make a way that you review all these situations in a proper way, make the assessment for all the legal aspects, and then make sure that whatever is you have identified as a risk or you think it needs to be clarified more, you do the necessary clarifications beforehand before anything goes out of order. In case now you come to the solution that if you review a case or make an assessment and say, okay, good, whatever the employee wanted and wished, that is actually not really working, or it is working, but with a lot of to-dos on it. And typically, you would like to avoid to have too many to-dos. So you may want to check on alternatives and discuss the alternatives with the employee as well as with the line management and whoever is involved. What we have seen so far, and some companies have already really implemented quite well certain processes, guidelines, or are currently dealing with the setup of guideline, and also seeing that all the formalities will be taken care of, that the communication with all the stakeholders is really key and essential, so that everybody knows exactly what they need to do, what the rules are, what they have to look at, and that there are no unnecessary things happening in the end, and circumstances arise where you have to kind of last minute make any changes, or in the end have to deal with fines and sanctions. And here, just a quick summary before we come to then all your questions you may have to that topic, or which you maybe still have. So cross-border employees, that was the first category we've listed in the first slide. This is something which I think can easily be looked at, and that you really see that the individual is working less than those 25%. Now, the thing is that some of the nationalities or some of your employees might not even have those 25% they can work in the home office without being subject to the social security system in the other country. So you may want to look at that and then make a decision based on the nationality. So also for cross-border employees, you definitely have to do something. Now, it's also not just done with if you set up the rules and then think, okay, everything will be now in line, you don't need to do anything. That is not true. What you have to do is really every year then to check with that employee whether they have really worked less than those 25% in the home country. And the crucial thing is that it's not just working for you, which you can check even yourself, but the 25% in that is working in wherever. So in case somebody is, for example, a coach in a soccer club on top of it, then that will be considered as working in the home in the other country as well. And you will have to look at that in addition. So we recommend employers to get basically signing a letter from the employees every year at the beginning of the new year to confirm in writing that they haven't worked more than those 25% in their home country. The PE risk is something we know from a couple of countries now. They want to look at that a bit closer. And there is a huge discussion whether a home office can actually be a permanent establishment at all. Some countries are quite clear in that it cannot be. So if somebody is working from home, then that can never be a permanent establishment. Some countries say it depends a bit on the level of the employee, and some say that is also it's always possible. I mean, if the employee is working on a regular basis from his own home office, then that could also be viewed as a permanent establishment. So there, I think there will be lots of changes and adjustments from the various countries, and we have to look at that or keep a closer look at that matter. Working for a limited period abroad, we just made a poll in through LinkedIn as well, and we've seen that, or the answer of that was that about 50% out of the answers there was that those companies have already made some guidelines or have thought about it and have implemented certain rules and regulations for that kind of new category of remote working. So that is definitely something, at least from our point of view, that companies need to look at and find a solution which will work for them. And there some of think that there is a kind of an easy approach or an approach which works for company A that definitely works also for company B, C, and D, but that is not the situation. Now, you will have to look at that working for a limited period abroad from different angles and aspects, and each of the requests from your employees might be completely different. Some might be they just really want to combine vacation with work, or they do want to learn a different language, go for a certain period to work that or to learn that language in the other country, but won't go to the language school the whole day, and therefore would like to combine maybe work and learning the other language. So that might be also something, or they want to accompany their spouse to if the spouse had been assigned to another country. You will have to look at each one what you would like to actually offer and be open for. What we've seen so far is from most of the companies, they say that workation, so that in principle they will offer or open to offer someone or all their employees to work for up to 30 days in a different country, because that is also usually something where you have really limited risk in labor law matter, immigration matter, social security and tax matter. So you are more or less under the radar. And permanent working abroad, that is definitely something you have to look and find a solution for that. And there is a lot of administration and processes and things to be done. First of all, as well, and that is maybe also the major part, is that the labor law from the other country is applicable, as well as social security and taxes. So you have most likely someone who has not, where you don't necessarily need to run the payroll in your country, but you rather need to run the payroll in the other country. Or you have the situation that you will have to run the payroll in both countries. To be compliant, as you can see, there are lots of things to look at, and it is you will need to spend a bit of time in making sure that you will basically really look at all the aspects and have the regulations in place you may need. Depending on the number of employees, and depending on the request and depending on what you want to do, you may also need to think about whether there is not a tool, an IT tool you can use for that. And there are currently a couple of tools which are established. We can't really recommend you one yet because we haven't tried all of them, but you may want to check out whether there is a tool and whether that is then something you can use easily. If you use a tool, then see whether that works well with your payroll as well, so that, or with your HR system, so that you don't have to do in the end everything twice. So that was basically what I wanted to say from our side. And now the floor is more or less open to you for any kind of questions you have. And there are already some, so let's see. So, in case of remote employees with diplomatic status, partner spouses of diplomats, can home office while on post abroad count as being in the home country, as for example the physical space of embassies and is legally considered as being in the home country? If yes, this would simplify working permit requirements and taxes. Now, you will have to look at that also, at least from an immigration perspective, whether that really will work. From a tax perspective as well, and from a social security perspective as well. Even the embassy is kind of being viewed as home country, because of then the employee being employed by another company, and the employee is has not the diplomatic status. You will have to check on it in that regard. I don't think that is that easy, that there is no problem at all with that, but I also would have to check on it. I can't tell you that by heart. In case you would like us to check on it, then just let me know and we will do so. And then the other question is Social Security. When an employee is deciding for a workation, do we need an A1? And if yes, which one are we allowed to request, assignment or multi-state worker? Now, we usually use the assignment version because it is a kind of assignment, because the employee is working for a certain period outside of Switzerland or outside of the home country, and then is returning to the home country. It is not completely correct, but that is what is currently used. The thing is, you can also use multi-state worker, but multi-state worker is usually meant like someone is regularly working from abroad. So it depends a bit on what the situation is. If you have someone, for example, who wants to work once a month from another country for 2 days or for a longer weekend, then you may want to use the multi-state worker. one, and if you have someone just want to work for 3 weeks after the holiday in the other country, then you may want to use the assignment version. The next question is, in the EU, posted worker notification mandatory for workation, request of the employee to work from abroad, no service provision on behalf of the employee. You basically have to check that in the individual country. We know there are differences because each of the EU member states have different regulations and thoughts about that. In some countries, as long as there is no salary payment or the employee is not really working on a client side, you may not have that requirement and you don't need to do that. But you definitely need to check whether that is a requirement or not. Okay, and the last question is there a possibility that as an employer we can say and leave everything to the employee and don't do anything in regard to workation? Now, my clear advice is that you shouldn't do that. You should basically really look at it, check on it, make an assessment, make a proper assessment, clarify whatever you think is not clear for you, and get the also external support in that regard, so that there is no legal compliance matter arising for the employee as well as also for you, because in the end he is working for you in the other country, as said before. So these were the questions we have received. If there is no further question at the moment, then I'm sure we will still have see and meet each other again in regard to that topic, because that is something which there will be lots of changes within the next year coming, because all the countries will see that they want to make sure that people are working compliantly only in their country, and companies will just have to also make sure they are in line with everything. And I don't think that the request or the need and the wish from the employees will actually decrease, and I think it will be just the other way around. It will even more increase, because basically technically we can work from wherever. There's now one more question which came in, which is, should the A1 be issued from day one? We would recommend yes, it should be requested from the day one, because also in principle, if just for those categories and people, you will, as soon as they then will come back from their workation, you will just forget with it and you won't do anything. And then it will be hard after a couple of years to get any kind of documentation if in the other country then they only realize it and will request that. And therefore, we rather recommend to really do that upfront. As soon as you know that, you request the A1, and that is looking at the way it works currently, at least in Switzerland and in most of the EU member states as well. It's quite simple and easy, and there is no kind of governmental cost and charges associated to it. With that, I basically close that topic and use the last couple of minutes just to let you know we have one more webinar this month, which is about global mobility trends and best practices. And we do have as well one more coffee and consulting this year. We do the next one together with Emmy, and it is about keep exploring Emmy talent management insights, which might be really quite interesting. And if you have time, then I really recommend you to join because it will be good. And that's then also from my side. I hope you enjoyed the coffee and consulting. You can take the one or the other thing with you, and I wish you still a great week, and hope to see you soon in one of our next events. Have a great time, and thank you.